38 billion streams, 10 Grammy nods, 4 consecutive AMA Artist of the Year nominations, 2 Billboard Live Music Awards, and a record 8 RAA certified diamond singles. That doesn't sound like a good setup for the punchline that appeared above a recent review of Austin, the self-titled 6th album from the sometimes rapper and often auto-tuned crooner Austin Richard Post Malone. Critic Damian Morris overall praised the album's opening, but summed up the artist's most personal effort, the culmination of 7 years at the top of the music game, as up close and whiny. At 28, the hard-drinking, liberally tattooed, and self-described homeless-looking Malone still casts quite a shadow in the world of popular music, boasting over 100 million combined listeners every month between all platforms, along with tens of millions of followers. Still, with his last diamond-certified single now 4 years old, and major award nominations drying up, it's a fair question to ask these days. What happened to Post Malone and his relevancy? Polarizing from the beginning, Posty continues to inspire divided opinions. The view among his diehard fans that he's the musical voice of a generation, and the sense from the musical establishment that he's a niche folk rock rap act who doesn't really know himself, his sound, or what about his music ever captured our attention in the first place. The establishment may have a point. Malone's last 2 studio albums have hardly set the musical world on fire. For context, his first 3 monster hit full-length LPs, Stoney, Beer Bongs and Bentleys, and Hollywood's Bleeding, together sold over 1 million in album sales first week, while this year's Austin and last year's 12 Eric Toothache sold fewer than 250,000 units combined. Out is the bass-blasting hip-hop and many high-profile collaborations with record-topping artists. In is the acoustic guitar and backing choir. Malone's critics have always noted the versatility of his talent, encompassing hip-hop, trap, rap, metal, stadium rock, and folk music, which is one of the reasons his early career saw him forge many unlikely alliances, including ones with Justin Bieber, Kanye West, 21 Savage, and Ozzy Osbourne. So too have they noted his tendency to self-destruct, from within his lyrics depicting near constant substance abuse and codependent relationships. Since Malone finally decamped from good from Los Angeles to a compound in Utah in 2022, citing his desire to have a place when the world ends, his music has continued to evolve, and so has his personal life. Unfortunately for him, at least in the commercial aspect, this has only contributed to what has now become the brutal decline of Post Malone. Malone was born Austin Richard Post on July 4th, 1995 in Syracuse, New York, the only son of Richard Post. Austin was raised primarily by his father and stepmother Jody, worked together at an industrial laundry company, in sharp contrast to the excesses of Malone's early career. His home life was reportedly ordinary and middle class. He accompanied his occasional wedding DJ father to numerous events in Syracuse and later in Dallas, Texas, when the family moved so that Rich could get a job managing concessions for the Dallas Cowboys home stadium. There, the young pre-Post Malone was exposed to live musical acts like Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, AC/DC, and Bruce Springsteen. This unique access to diverse musical influences had a powerful effect on Malone, and his musical talent was forged early working the turntables with his father, an impact on his eclectic style that cannot be overstated. Austin also took up the guitar around this time. Much of Malone's early music, revealed in mixtapes and live performances all over Texas, strongly focused on pop and rock music, primarily covers and remixes of popular acts like Guns N' Roses, Fleetwood Mac, and Outkast. By the time he graduated high school, Malone's mixtapes and live performances had begun attracting attention from the music industry. His mixtape Young and After Them Riches won him the class title of Most Likely to Be Famous. By 2015, when Austin was just 20, he was opening for Bryson Tiller at his father's alma mater, Syracuse University, and crafting the breakout hit single White Iverson. His R-rated lyrics and the growing collection of tattoos on his son's hands and face may have occasionally given Rich Post pause about his son's judgment, but we, as the public, would have never have known it, as he was a zealous defender of his young son's musical talent. He even spoke up for young Austin on social media, writing about his music in 2015, "If you don't understand it, give it another try." His father's passion for music and unwavering support of his son's ambition helped allow Austin to drop out of college and head for LA at just 18 years old, taking up with a group of friends in the San Fernando Valley. The story of how a young Austin rose from relative obscurity to the heights of musical fame in just a handful of years has several unlikely turns from here. Unlikely perhaps if one isn't familiar with the take it or leave it attitude that Malone exudes, or the preternatural confidence he presents himself with. A self-labeled freeloader and pill popper who played Call of Duty day and night, Malone wanted to avoid getting a job, quote, at Chicken Express at all costs, and hoped living at a party house near the heart of the music industry would yield opportunities. Amazingly, it almost immediately did. Within a year, the still teenage Post, now Post Malone, was invited into the studio by rapper/producer FKI First. Together, they produced Malone's breakout single White Iverson, which appeared on SoundCloud in early 2015, quickly growing in popularity and onto the Billboard Hot 100, thanks to tweet endorsements from Wiz Khalifa and Mac Miller. The trap-inspired, ethereal, and heavily auto-tuned rap song was eventually certified diamond by the RAA, garnering over 10 million equivalent units in sales and streams. He was the youngest artist ever to receive the honor. Over the next year, a flurry of introductions and deals saw Malone sign with Republic Records and produce songs with Kanye West, Rick Rubin, 2 Chainz, and even Justin Bieber, all of whom contributed to Malone's first full-length studio album, Stoney, released to much anticipation in early 2016. The album was certified 5 times platinum and yielded Malone's second diamond signal. Congratulations! By 2016, at just 21, Malone was the opening act for Justin Bieber's Purpose World Tour. Perhaps as the perfect encapsulation of Malone's casual relationship with fame, he once was quoted as saying, "I came to play some shitty songs and party a little bit while I do it," called his performance mesmerizing, zeitgeist defining. The 64-city extravaganza featuring 808s, stadium rock on an acoustic guitar, and elaborate pyrotechnic displays would define the Smoke rapper's evolving style. The tour also cemented an enduring friendship with Bieber, even after Malone referred to his friend's religious beliefs as, quote, culty in a Rolling Stone piece. How a 19-year-old rapper with an evident lack of a defined sound manages to convince the whole music industry that is the future of pop music is a question Malone himself probably can't answer. Though obviously catchy, his music hardly seemed to be compatible with the career as a pop star at first. Yet audiences immediately flocked to his energetic performances. They bought his raw and sometimes emotional albums, driving a series of #1 hit singles and a record 8 diamond records over the next 4 years. Many in music will argue that high expectations are, in a funny way, an essential key to success. In an industry defined by image and virality, no goal is too lofty, no personality too big. Expectations for Malone after White Iverson and the success of Stoney were as high as anyone's in the music industry, and Malone, true to his art, lived a life of excess during this time, never having to have held a full-time job or paid an electric bill. Post now owned a Rolls Royce and a Porsche 911, as well as renting an 11,000 square foot house in Beverly Hills with floor-to-ceiling glass paneling, where he held lavish parties with rappers, actors, and music and movie industry mogul. The release of his second studio album, Beer Bongs and Bentleys, saw Malone trade his previous work's more smoked-out style for a decidedly commercial turn to pop rap and a heavy 808 earwormy sound that typified rap music at the time. Those tracks were interspersed with rock ballads, but the overall style remained eclectic, reflecting his roots as a remix artist. His shift in sound also brought about the first notes of a growing backlash against the overnight sensation. Not everyone, unsurprisingly, was on board with Malone's breakout success. Detractors questioned his musical longevity and his motivations for turning to a more commercial tone. The musical content, too, reflected a more paranoid style, with its opening track fittingly titled Paranoid. The album as a whole, while it embraces the stereotypical commercial values and the glorification of materialism common in the modern pop scene, is also strangely downbeat for the sophomore effort of a rising star. The surprisingly dark hit single, Rockstar in particular, reflects a nihilistic streak that belied Malone's high roller lifestyle at the time, set over a repetitive, hypnotic, downward melodic progression and a spare trap beat. There was a monotony to the vapid lyrics being sung that seemed to evoke a deeper sense of longing for the young superstar, reflected many other times throughout the rest of the tracks as well. In some ways, for as good as the album was considered to have sounded, it really did seem like he was going through the motion, and Malone himself, even at his most reflective, is not exactly forthcoming about his songwriting process, characterizing much of what he wrote in this period as, quote, mistakes, accidents, or the result of drinking binges. That unfocused process was perhaps never clearer than on this second album, where much of the disconnected material is focused on materialism, fame, and personal grievances, interspersed with occasional guitar ballads. Still, the work was an unqualified hit, breaking streaming records on Spotify with nearly 50 million streams on the first day after its release. It went 5 times platinum and produced 5 hit singles, including Rockstar and Psycho, each of which reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. 9 songs on Beer Bongs and Bentleys would ultimately chart in the top 20 in 2018, making it a commercial success and an obvious high point in his career. Still, critics and fans disagreed on the direction of Malone's music, especially after the subsequent release. Pitchfork called the album singular, dour, and argued that it was overly long and grows stale upon repeat listens. Critic Evan Rytalewski praised Malone's perceptiveness and media instincts, writing that Malone's commercial success was aided heavily by his melodic trap style and the universality that came from his employment of rock and country ballad-like passages that were stadium-friendly and appealed to fans of varying genres. But Rytalewski ultimately dismissed the album as humorless and repetitive. Malone's detractors within the industry also grew louder, some arguing that he was a, quote, culture vulture. Radio host Charlemagne the God criticized the album and Malone for appropriating black culture and music. Malone was quick to answer his critics, saying in Rolling Stone of Charlemagne, "He hates me because I'm white and different, but we're still rocking, and we're still successful, and he can't stop it." That year, Malone gloated from the stage at Coachella, ripping his haters for calling him a one-hit wonder. For any of the criticisms you could levy on Malone at the time, this was certainly not one of them. By late 2018, when videos surfaced on social media of Malone wandering around the site of a major late-night car wreck, yelling, "My Rolls Royce is total," the entertainment media had labeled him with that perhaps most cursed of all adjectives for any pop pop star. Divisive. More recently, Malone has referred to this period in his career as both painful and depressing. He notes the pressures of success and money coming without the tools a young person needs to attain a stable home life. Malone recently told Zane Lowe from Apple Music, "I never got time or really had the bandwidth to experience the journey. High expectations may lead to success, but success doesn't inevitably lead to happiness." By late 2019, after the release of his third studio album, Hollywood's Bleeding, Malone was fed up with life in the world capital of entertainment. When Hollywood's Bleeding was finally released, after many delays, in late 2019, the album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 6 million equivalent units since. It was the height of Malone's commercial success, and a crowning achievement for a music industry newcomer who had become a verified megastar, widely viewed as an all-time high musically, with collaborations including Ozzy Osbourne, Travis Scott, Future, among many others. Hollywood's Bleeding was fated to be the end of a relatively short road. By 2020, citing LA and Hollywood's strange vibes, where there were, quote, a lot of vampires, or people who would drain his energy, and presumably his bank account, Malone started talking about a move out of state. He eventually bought a $3 million ranch home in Utah, where he hoped to find peace and a release from the anxieties and pressure of a celebrity lifestyle. Malone intended to retreat not just from the world of celebrity, but possibly from music itself, as rumors swirled that he would no longer record a new album. The move may have also had to do with the decline in his fortunes musically, while his fourth studio album, 12 Karat Toothache, which eventually dropped after many COVID-related delays in 2022, spawned 3 semi-hit singles. Being a modest success commercially overall, it could have been better received by critics. The album does contain its fair share of bright spots, like Lemon Tree and Wrapped Around Your Finger, which John Karamanica of the New York Times praised as 1950s sweetness and 1980s syntheticness. Variety's review noted the album's tonal consistency as a slight step up from his previous efforts. Still, for an album that followed the monster success of Hollywood's Bleeding, Toothache was disappointing for Posteen's label performance-wise. Overall, it seemed like a strange mix of deeply personal and almost spiritual material on tracks like Euthanasia and Waiting for a Miracle, contrasted with typical poppy dance material like One Right Now with The Weeknd and I Like You with Doja Cat. These varying materials fuse into a strange brew in the truly odd closing tracks that swing wildly from New Recording, a Tom York-like guitar ballad seemingly recorded with the KFC bucket, to a set of ethereal yet angry stadium scream tracks that nevertheless can't help but engage in petty bickering with haters and ex-lovers. It's as bizarre a coda for a major studio album as we'll likely see anytime soon, and it's certainly a wonder that the project was released at all in its final condition, leaving some to speculate that Malone had lost interest in it at some point. At 14 songs in the non-deluxe edition, it was Malone's shortest full-length LP to date. His image seemed to be one of a songwriter at war with the image he had created, and after its long gestation, audiences largely passed on the opportunity to hear it in lieu of the catchier tracks of his past. During the early years of his success, Malone had drawn ire from fellow rappers, especially for stating that he would, quote, be a country singer by the time he turned 40. Strangely, that early quip has largely come to be seen as prophetic. From his self-imposed exile in Utah, Malone has turned to the guitar rock roots that characterized his teenage years. Since the release of Toothache, Malone has largely moved away from the image and the identity he forged as a hip-hop artist, opening his latest album, Austin, with a pure guitar ballad, of all things. Yet the blatant commercialism and stadium pop sensibilities remain in tracks like Morning, Too Cool to Die, and Overdrive. The album's overall sound is far more restrained and conventional than Malone's earlier works, evoking the synth pop of Depeche Mode, or the acoustic rock of a solo Dave Grohl and Eddie Vedder. Audiences, however, just didn't seem to respond as they once did. Austin peaked at #2 on the Billboard 200, but sold only 113,000 equivalent units in its first week, with 101 million streams. This was roughly half the number of streams Beer Bongs had received in just its first day after release. That was a disappointing figure for an artist with a following of around 50 million routinely on Spotify, and proportionally similar numbers on other platforms. Some critics weren't here for the evolution in style and sometimes substance. The Guardian, which published the Up Close and Whiny review, called the album listenable, but ultimately overstuffed, missing the innovative elements of his earlier works. Formed in a collaborative process with many talented artists and producers. Others criticized the album's content. Pitchfork's review called it a self-serving passion project, stating, while his guitar album is decidedly not a country album, the tenderness with which he regards whatever bottles at hand is certainly the most country thing about it. Critic Brad Shoup continues, for some reason, he won't let his songs breathe. He chases the Nirvana Unplugged vibe, with a choir-backed lurch through luxury. Others critique the album's iffy sound quality and far simpler production value, the result of Malone's now largely homegrown process. Malone said of his new writing style, I sit on the can, there's good acoustics in the bathroom for the most part. It was so fun to play guitar in every song. Of the guitar, he said, it just goes, and it's a conduit. That description might cut several ways. If the album was written on the toilet, many critics believed it should have stayed there. But Malone is philosophical. In a recent marathon appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, where he promoted his latest tour of North and South America, he talked about the evolution of his personal life, from a bad boy to the father of a young girl. He spoke on his earlier career as a painful and confusing experience, in which he struggled with anxiety and the knowledge that he didn't really know himself. Ultimately, he found that success did not make him any happier, and that he'd be forced to do work on himself rather than expecting fame or fortune to do it for him. In short, he wasn't chart weren't watching or chasing anymore. He had grown past that emotionally. And so now I pass the question on to you, the viewer. Are we post Malone, or is the delightfully weird pop music savant opening a relatively new chapter in the history of rock, pop, rap fusion? Say what you will about the lyrical madman and the story of his rise from guitar covers to mixtapes to smoke rapper to belieber to rock star and back again to guitar rocker and finally to quiet Utah family man. His journey has been one that few could have foreseen, perhaps few other than Malone himself. Malone too is waiting for his next evolution, summing up his most recent chapter in the perfectly fitting statement: I'm just here, prepared for when the aliens come. Now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below for other videos you'd like to see done in this vein, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.